The city moved like a machine, fast, loud, and uncaring. People walked past one another with eyes glued to their phones or lost in thoughts about meetings, bills, and coffee orders. No one really noticed anyone, especially not the girl with the worn-out hoodie sitting quietly near the park fountain, tying the laces of her shoes for the third time, just to look busy. Her name was Nia. Nia was only 17. She had dreams, big ones, of dancing on stage, of hearing applause meant, for her, of people saying her name with admiration instead of pity. But dreams didn't buy food or keep you warm at night, not when you had no one and nowhere to go. Her mother had died when Nia was 13. After bouncing through foster homes and shelters, Nia learned one thing: survival was up to her. She carried a small backpack with all her belongings and a worn-out notebook where she wrote lyrics, steps, and wishes no one would ever read. That day was cold. The kind of cold that creeps into your bones and refuses to leave. But the sun peeked through the clouds, and for a few minutes it almost felt like something good might happen. Nia stood in the center of the open plaza, where street performers often danced or played music. She'd been coming here for a week, watching others perform and imagining herself spinning freely, just once more, like she used to before life got heavy. Her feet moved gently to a beat only she could hear. She began to dance, not for money, not for praise, just because it made her feel alive again. People walked by. Some slowed, others ignored her completely. A few tossed coins into the cracked plastic cup she'd set down. But someone else noticed her. A boy. He watched from a sleek black wheelchair positioned under the shade of a tree. His name was Julian. He was the only son of Victor Langston, a real estate tycoon known for his high-rise empire and expensive taste. Julian had been in a wheelchair for the last 2 years, ever since a car accident stole his ability to walk. But it wasn't the wheelchair that kept him distant from the world. It was the silence, the lack of laughter, of music, of connection. Since the accident, Julian hadn't smiled once. His nurse sat nearby reading a magazine, not paying attention, while his driver waited at a respectful distance. But Julian's eyes were locked on Nia. Her movements were raw and imperfect, but full of emotion. Every spin and step told a story. Something stirred in him. It wasn't pity, it wasn't curiosity, it was recognition. Like her rhythm matched something inside of him that had long been quiet. Nia paused, breathless, hair falling into her eyes. She looked up and saw him watching. Their eyes met, just for a second. But it was enough. He rolled toward her slowly, his chair gliding over the stone path. People began to stare. Nia's heart pounded. Was she in trouble? Was he someone important? Should she apologize? But Julian said nothing at first. He only raised his hand and gave a slight, uncertain wave. Nia smiled awkwardly and gave a small nod. "Can I try?" he asked softly. Nia tilted her head. "Try what?" "Dancing." She blinked. "You want to dance? With me?" Julian looked away for a moment. "If you show me how. I can't move my legs, but maybe you could teach me something with my hands." She hesitated. People were watching. Some snickered, others whispered. A few filmed with their phones, but Nia didn't care. She stepped forward slowly and nodded. And there, in the middle of the city's chaos, a homeless girl with calloused feet and a millionaire's son who couldn't walk began to move in rhythm together. She clapped her hands gently, showing him a pattern. He mimicked it. Then she moved side to side, letting her arms flow, encouraging him to do the same with his upper body. Slowly, he followed. It wasn't perfect, but it was something real. Crowds formed. Some people laughed, but many stayed quiet, drawn in by the strange beauty of the moment. A woman in a sharp blue suit standing nearby pulled out her phone to film, her eyes wide with disbelief. She worked for a local media company, and she recognized Julian Langston instantly. What was he doing with a street girl, and why was he smiling? But Nia didn't notice the cameras. Neither did Julian. They were in their own world. Minutes passed. Nia ended the dance with a little bow and a smile that came from deep inside her. Julian grinned back, eyes shining, cheeks red from excitement. Then something happened. Julian's fingers twitched. Not just his fingers, his toes. He looked down, confused. For 2 years, he hadn't felt anything below the waist, but now something stirred. It was faint, but real. He didn't say anything at first. How could he? Was it his imagination, a trick of adrenaline? Nia looked at him, concerned. You okay? He nodded slowly. I felt something. What do you mean? He looked at her, eyes wide. I think I felt my foot. Before she could respond, his nurse came rushing over, having finally noticed the commotion. The driver, too. Then a man in a dark coat walked briskly toward them. Nia recognized him from a magazine cover and a bus stop ad. Victor Langston, Julian's father. He looked furious. What's going on here? Victor barked, eyes darting between his son and the girl with holes in her shoes. Julian spoke quickly. Dad, wait, she helped me. I danced. I felt something. I think I moved my foot. Victor's face flickered with shock. Then he looked at Nia with suspicion. Who are you? Nia took a step back. I didn't do anything wrong, sir. Victor stared at her like she didn't belong there. Why are you even near him? Julian's voice rose. She's my friend. The word stunned everyone around them. Friend, Victor didn't know what to say. His son hadn't called anyone a friend in over 2 years. Suddenly, more reporters were arriving. Someone must have posted the video. Nia backed away slowly, overwhelmed. This wasn't what she wanted. She hadn't meant to draw attention. She just wanted to dance. She turned to leave, but Julian called out, Wait, what's your name? She paused, barely able to breathe. Nia. Will you come back tomorrow? He asked, hopeful. She looked. The cameras, the crowd, his father's cold glare. She wanted to say yes, but how could she? Just then, a woman stepped out from behind the crowd. She was pregnant and looked exhausted. Her hair was messy, and she clutched her purse like she'd been searching for something all day. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded note. Are you the one who gave me your seat yesterday? She asked, pointing at a tall blackies teen standing near the fountain. His name was Marcus, and yes, he had quietly stood up on the crowded bus the day before, offering his seat to her without a word. She handed him the note. This is for you. It's not much, but it might change your life. He looked confused, but took it gently. Nia saw this and paused, something tugging inside her. A moment ago, she was dancing in the shadows. Now she stood at the edge of something bigger, something she didn't understand yet. Behind her, Julian's voice echoed, Please come back. But before Nia could decide what to do, a loud voice shouted from behind the cameras, Did you see what he just did? Everyone turned, and in that moment, everything changed. The voice that rang out cut through the air like a siren. People turned, confused, trying to find where it came from. Cameras shifted, cell phones tilted, and the circle that had formed around Julian and Nia slowly cracked open to make room for the source. A teenage boy, breathless and wide-eyed, came running toward them. He pointed, not at Julian, not at Nia, but at Marcus, the black teen who had just received the folded note from the pregnant woman. I was on that bus, the boy said, panting. Yesterday, I saw what he did. All eyes shifted to Marcus now, who stood frozen with the paper still clutched in his hand. He didn't know what to say. This wasn't the kind of attention he was used to. Growing up, in East Lincoln, a neighborhood better known for what it lacked than what it had, Marcus had been taught to stay quiet, stay respectful, and stay out of trouble. But now people were watching him like he'd just stepped out of a movie. What do you mean? Someone asked from the crowd. The boy nodded urgently. He stood up so that pregnant lady could sit. No one else moved, not even when she looked, like she was about to faint. He just got up and helped her sit down. Didn't say anything. Then when the bus stopped, he got off early and walked like 5 blocks in the rain. A low murmur spread through the crowd. Someone whispered, That's rare. Another said, Didn't even ask for anything. The woman, still clutching, her back from the weight of her belly, turned toward Marcus again. I meant what I said. That note, it has my husband's name and number. He runs a scholarship fund for young people like you. He's always looking for students with character, not just grades. Marcus blinked, his fingers trembling slightly now as he opened the folded paper. His lips moved silently as he read the name at the bottom. Then his eyes shot up, wide with disbelief. A man in the crowd, tall, bald, and wearing a gray overcoat, gave him a nod from the distance. It was him, the husband. Marcus's mouth went dry, but before he could respond, a security guard pushed through the gathering. Behind him, 2 more men in black suits approached, one speaking quickly into a radio. Victor Langston snapped his fingers. "Clear this crowd now. My son's health comes first." Julian flinched. "Dad, stop." Victor ignored him, speaking directly to the security team. "Get him to the car." Then he turned to Nia, his face tight with suspicion. "And make sure she stays away." Nia felt a wave of cold run through her chest. She didn't belong here, she knew it. But the way Julian had smiled, the way he said, "Please come back," it had lit something inside her she thought had died years ago. One of the guards stepped closer, his eyes on Nia like she was a threat. "You need to move along now," Julian shouted. "No, don't touch her." The crowd grew silent again. Everyone seemed to hold their breath. Even the wind paused. Victor turned sharply. "Julian!" "She didn't do anything wrong." Julian said firmly. "You said I'd never feel anything again, but when I danced with her, I felt something. I'm not making it up. I felt my foot move." Victor's face faltered. Just for a second. Julian looked at him, eyes full of a quiet plea. "Maybe it was nothing, but maybe, just maybe, it was something. Don't take that away from me." Victor didn't reply. He just turned and walked away. The guards followed, but one of them gave Nia a short nod before leaving, like he knew but couldn't say it out loud. Julian was wheeled toward the black town car waiting by the curb. Before the door shut, he twisted his body and looked back. His eyes searched for her, for Nia, but she was already gone. Nia ran. Not because she was afraid of being arrested or blamed. She ran because she didn't want anyone to see her cry. She hadn't cried in years. Not when her mother died. Not when she aged out of the last group home. Not when she'd had to sleep in a dumpster behind a diner just to avoid the rain. But now with everything, Julian's smile, the crowd, Victor's glare, the sudden taste of hope, she felt it all crashing in. She ducked into an alley between 2 brick buildings and sat down behind a stack of cardboard boxes. Her breath came in short bursts. Her heart thudded like a drum in her ears. Why had she danced? Why had she let herself hope? She reached into her backpack and pulled out her notebook. Flipping past pages of old scribbles, sketches, and lyrics, she stopped at the last empty page. Her hand trembled as she wrote one word: Julian. Meanwhile, across town, Marcus stood on the corner with the note still in his hand. He kept reading the name over and over, the name of the man who could change his future. Could it really be that simple? One act of kindness, one moment on a crowded bus, was that all it took? But Marcus wasn't used to trusting things that came easy. People didn't hand out opportunities in his world. They handed out warnings, insults, and locked doors. He looked up, saw the pregnant woman being helped into a taxi, and wondered, why him? The man in the gray overcoat walked up behind him quietly. "Young man," he said, "you're going to want to call that number." Marcus looked at him cautiously. "Why?" The man smiled faintly. "Because my wife never writes notes. Not unless she's sure." Marcus opened his mouth, but the man added, "That wasn't charity. That was a door. What you do with it is up to you." And with that, he walked away. Back at the Langston estate, Julian sat in silence while doctors examined him. He kept trying to explain the feeling, the sensation of his toes twitching, of warmth returning to places that had felt numb for years. The doctors wrote everything down, promising to run tests, but Julian didn't need tests. He knew what he felt, and he knew who helped him feel it. Naya, later that night, he turned to his nurse and asked a simple question. "Can you find out who she is?" The nurse looked uncertain. "Your father might not approve." Julian smiled. "I didn't ask for his approval." Across the city, Nia lay curled under a bench, her backpack as a pillow, her notebook clutched to her chest. Her stomach growled and her feet ached, but she felt something strange. An ache that wasn't pain. It was longing. A hunger not for food, but for more. Somewhere deep down, she believed this wasn't the end. It couldn't be. Because miracles don't happen twice. But when they do, they don't happen without a reason. And this one? This was just beginning. Rain slid down the windows of Julian's room like silent music. The mansion around him was quiet, but not in a peaceful way. It was heavy, tense. He sat in his wheelchair, staring out at the garden below. His fingers drummed lightly against the armrest. Since that moment in the park, he hadn't stopped thinking about her, about Naya. The way her feet moved like they were telling a story. The way she looked at him like she didn't see the wheelchair, just him. But every time he tried to speak her name, the weight of his father's shadow loomed large. Victor Langston wasn't a man used to being questioned, let alone defied. Especially not by his only son. Especially not now, with the media hovering and board members breathing down his neck. He'd spent years building his empire. His son dancing in the park with a homeless girl was not the headline he wanted to see trending online. "You have a physical therapy session in 10 minutes, the nurse said softly, wheeling in a small machine. Julian didn't answer. He was too deep in thought, too far away. "I want to find her," he finally said. The nurse hesitated. "You mean the girl from the park?" He nodded. "Naya. You really think she helped you move your foot?" Julian looked down. "I don't know if it was her, or something she reminded me of, but I haven't felt anything in years. And then suddenly, just like that, it's like my body woke up." "You don't forget that feeling." The nurse said nothing for a moment, then walked to the door. "I'll see what I can do." Meanwhile, across the city, Nia woke to the sound of footsteps near her bench. It was still early. Gray sky, soft drizzle. She stayed perfectly still, her notebook tucked tightly against her chest. A hand reached down, not to hurt her, but to leave something. A paper bag. She waited until the footsteps faded, then opened it to find a sandwich and a small bottle of juice. No note, no name, just quiet kindness. She hadn't danced since that day, not even in secret. It felt like the moment had been too big to follow. Every time she tried, her feet would move, but her heart stayed still, like it had been left behind in the park with Julian. She didn't know his name. She didn't know who he really was. She only knew how it felt when they moved together, like they weren't two broken kids from different worlds, but one rhythm, one spark, and still, her world hadn't changed. She was still cold, still homeless, still invisible, but something inside her had shifted. As the day moved on, she walked aimlessly through the city. Sometimes she'd press her hand to cafe windows, watching people talk and laugh like they had nothing to worry about. Other times she'd sit near the library steps, pretending to read a real book while keeping her notebook hidden beneath her jacket. At a red light, she heard a voice. "Hey, you that girl from the park?" She turned, tense. A man with a camera slung over his shoulder stood there, squinting at her. "You were dancing with that rich kid, right? Langston's son?" Her body froze. "Look, I ain't trying to bother you," he said quickly. "But there's buzz around what happened. People online are saying it was a publicity stunt. Others think it's real. Some folks are calling it a miracle." Naya swallowed hard. "It wasn't a stunt." "I believe you," he said. "That kid doesn't look like the type to fake it. But you should know, not everyone's happy about it." He walked away before she could ask what he meant. Later that night, Nia sat under the overhang behind the community center, her notebook open again. This time she drew. Not dancing, not buildings, just faces. Julian's face, the nurse's. A security guard who looked at her like she didn't belong. But one face she couldn't draw. Victor Langston. She'd only seen him for a moment, but that one look he gave her stuck like a thorn. There was something cold in his eyes, something that made her feel small, and she didn't like feeling small anymore. Elsewhere in the city, Marcus sat in the back of a quiet diner, the note still folded in his pocket. He had reread it at least 100 times. He hadn't called the number, not yet. It wasn't that he didn't believe it was real, he wanted to believe. But when you've grown up watching good things fall apart, you learn not to grab too fast. You wait. You watch. Across from him sat his older sister, Keisha, who worked nights at the hospital. "You still holding on to that note?" she asked, sipping her coffee. Marcus nodded. "What if it's a setup?" Keisha raised an eyebrow. "A setup for what? You gave up your seat to a pregnant woman. That's not a crime." "But what if I mess it up?" he asked. "What if I call and I don't know what to say? What if they find out I'm not smart enough or don't have the grades?" She leaned forward. "You think that woman gave you her husband's number because of grades? She saw something in you, Marcus. Not books, character." He looked down at his hands. "I'm just not used to doors being open." "Well," she said quietly, "maybe it's time to learn how to walk through one." Back at the Langston home, Victor stood in his study watching a video on repeat. It was blurry, shot from a phone, but the footage was clear enough. Julian and Naya dancing, the way the crowd reacted, the smile on his son's face. He hit pause. It had been years since Julian had smiled like that. A knock came at the door. His assistant peeked in. "Sir, the media team is asking if you want to make a statement about the incident in the park." Victor turned slowly. "Tell them nothing. We're not feeding into the circus." "Understood," she said. "But there's something else. A reporter found the girl. Word is she's homeless." Victor's jaw tightened. "Should we bring her in?" the assistant asked. Victor's silence lasted a full 10 seconds. "No," he said finally. "Make sure. She disappears." The assistant's eyes widened, but she nodded. Victor turned back to the screen where Julian and Naya spun in slow motion. His voice was barely a whisper. "I can't afford miracles right now." But what Victor didn't realize was that some things couldn't be erased. Some sparks, once lit, refused to die. And Naya, she wasn't disappearing. Not this time. That night, Naya sat on a rooftop not far from downtown. The air was sharp and wet, but she didn't care. From up there, the city lights shimmered like stars that had fallen and forgotten their way back home. In the distance, she could just barely make out the Langston building, towering like a cold glass monument to everything she didn't have. But her mind wasn't on buildings or walls anymore. It was on a moment. A single moment when a boy who couldn't walk had stood up. Even if just a little. Even if just once. She hadn't seen him since. She didn't know if he was okay. She didn't even know if what happened that day was real or just something she imagined because she wanted to believe in something. Anything. But she couldn't stop thinking about him. She held her notebook close and flipped back to the drawing. Julian, his eyes wide, reaching for something unseen. She touched the sketch gently and whispered, "Please be okay." Down in the Langston estate, Julian sat in silence as his physical therapist wheeled away the equipment. Sweat covered his forehead. His legs were trembling again. But this time not from pain, they were reacting. He'd moved his toes, both of them, and it hadn't been a fluke, but every step forward came with more chains. His father had doubled, his security. His phone had been taken, and the nurse who once encouraged him had suddenly been replaced by someone colder, stricter, like they were more concerned with monitoring than healing. He knew something wasn't right. Julian wheeled himself to the edge of his balcony. Below, the garden lights glowed softly. Somewhere out there was the girl who'd lit a fire inside him, and he needed her to know he hadn't forgotten. He needed her to know that something had changed. Inside the main house, Victor made calls deep into the night. His voice was low and sharp. "I want her off the streets. I don't care how. I don't want cameras. No drama, just quiet. He didn't say her name, but everyone on the other end of the line knew who he meant. The girl, the homeless dancer, the threat. Meanwhile, Marcus finally pulled the note from his pocket and dialed the number, scribbled in ink. His fingers shook. The phone rang once, twice. Then a calm, older voice answered. Yes? My name's Marcus. I was told to call this number. I gave up my seat to a woman a few weeks ago. She gave me this. The line went quiet for a second, then the voice said, I've been waiting for your call. Marcus's heart skipped. Can you come in tomorrow? Bring your ID. And Marcus? Yeah? Your life is about to change. But across town, Nia wasn't feeling any miracles. She was feeling followed, watched. Twice now she'd noticed the same black car near the places she stayed. No plates, tinted windows. She'd moved carefully, quietly. But it kept showing up. She told herself she was being paranoid. Just nerves, until tonight. She turned the corner and saw it again, idling by the alley. This time she ran. Her feet knew the streets better than anyone. She ducked through narrow paths, over fences, between rusted gates. Her breath was ragged, her heart pounding like a drum. She didn't stop until she reached the train station. Loud, busy, safe. She crouched between the vending machines, gasping, thinking, why would anyone be following her? What did she even have that someone like them would care about? Unless someone was trying to erase what happened in the park. She remembered the man with the camera, the murmurs online, the way Victor Langston had looked at her like she was dirt under his shoe. She had felt small then, but she wasn't going to run forever. She stood up slowly, straightened her back, and took out her notebook. She flipped to the sketch of Julian. She pressed her hand over it, steady and full of fire. Then she wrote 3 words on the page below it. He deserves better. Back in the mansion, Julian had had enough. He waited until the night nurse dozed off, then quietly rolled to the door. He'd studied the pattern of the cameras, learned the blind spots. He'd practiced. And now finally he moved, slowly, silently, toward the back service elevator. One step at a time, he wheeled through dark corridors, memories echoing in his ears. He remembered being 7, laughing with his mom before the accident. He remembered his father yelling at the doctors, demanding perfection. He remembered being told to accept his limits. But not anymore. Outside, the rain had started again, soft and steady. Nia moved toward the last place she felt free. The park, the same stage, the same patch of cracked stone where her life had briefly touched his. She wasn't sure what she was hoping to find there. Maybe just proof that it happened. That he was real. That they hadn't imagined each other. She sat on the bench. No music, no crowd. Just the sound of water dripping from the leaves. And then, a shadow appeared. A figure at the edge of the clearing, a wheelchair. Her breath caught. She rose. To her feet, stepping slowly like any sudden movement might shatter the moment. He wheeled forward, soaked but smiling. Julian, she whispered. He nodded, eyes filled with light and storm all at once. How did you? I had to see you. She blinked back tears. I thought, maybe you forgot. I couldn't forget, he said. You woke something in me. Then suddenly, bright lights. A voice shouting, movement. Security. 2 men in suits appeared from the trees, rushing toward them. Julian turned. No! Don't touch her! But they didn't listen. Nia backed away, but one of the men grabbed her arm. Julian lunged forward, tipping, his wheelchair in the mud, dragging himself across the ground. Leave her alone, he cried. Then the rain poured harder, drenching everything. Nia twisted free, but more men came, and in that chaos, that blur of thunder and shouting and panic, someone else appeared. A voice cut through it all. Let them go. Everyone froze, even Julian, even Nia. Standing there in a long coat soaked to the bone but burning with quiet power was Marcus. Beside him stood a woman, the same woman from the bus, the one who had given him the note. She stepped forward, calm, fierce. You touch that girl again, she said to the guards, and you'll be answering to someone a lot more powerful than Victor Langston." Julian looked up from the mud, eyes wide. Nia stood frozen. Marcus just nodded, and the storm somehow grew louder. But even in the rain, even in the fear, something had shifted. Something impossible was happening, and none of them would ever be the same.